Poverty does not make criminals and murderers. Hello again. SkyWalker here, my people. I was listening to the debate and taking notes of excuses that people often make about crime, about murder and mayhem in many impoverished societies, especially third world people. The simple fact that causes the terrible thing is their mindsets. It's mindset cultivation. And if you are um if you are put in a place where you become independent, you become dependent for definitions, then you will be molded into your definer's desired wish for you. He can make you over in his own image or as something else. There are ways to make you receive new passions and sensitivities, and there are ways to make you lose passion and sensitivity, depending on how much of a believer you are. The masses did not make the society what it is, and it will not take the masses to save the masses, for the masses are already on remote. They are zombified. It will take the few and those chosen ones with wisdom to set the captives free from whatever intrusive culture spells that have entrapped their minds. It will take the revealers. It will take the revealers to help them. Marcus Garvey was a revealer. We live in a world where we see them come out every now and again, not concerned with money, but with making certain truths be seen. And we always see how the sheepish wolf masses put out to torment and crucify them. Just say something to highlight unnecessary truth, and the wolves will come at you. They don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear the norm they are used to, although it is killing and mind screwing them. The first time you watched a cartoon and saw characters doing terrible pains to each other, such that would kill or disable a living individual, it was all done in a fun way. It was hilarious. You laughed so hard every day and became insensitized to violence. You did not see that old intrusive demon entering the subliminal portal into your mind and creating a new mindset by way of culture inside of you. Somehow, violence was fun. You would kick him in the rear end and hoist him into the air like a rocket, and that would be funny. He would learn, right? The first time you watched cartoons that glorified sex, but in the most loose and blasphemous ways, you did not know what you saw. They were all subliminal. Yet there are so many who can break down the frames of hordes of Disney frames and show you what your children were seeing and hearing without realizing it. So not only did they receive a mindset of promiscuity, but they also receive the abominable ones compatible to what some ulterior characters want to see the next generation become. As long as they are dependent for definitions, they will never save themselves. I have had conversations with people where I pointed out the most obvious things and yet they could not see it. This means that they were not trusting their own understanding. Their minds were simply fixed to a choice. When your mind is not grounded to a truth but fixed on a choice, a prescription, you have become a zombie. You cannot understand the separation of issues. Just like someone tells me that his DNA test proves he is African, I try to explain that it does not. It proves you are of kin to the Africans, and that is different. It proves kinship, not geographical origin. Maybe these Africans are actually from Mesopotamia. Have you ever thought about that? But Mesopotamia was taken and branded as Middle East. Okay, wasn't it? I just said this for an example, not as a truth. Your brother left to England and you are still in Jamaica, right? Then you move to America. So he is in England, you are in America. When you take that DNA test, will it prove you are from England? Using your erroneous logic, yes, it will. No, you say that I sound foolish for telling you the mathematically sound truth. You are dependent for definition and you only take them as prescriptions. You don't have time to look for truth for your already own a choice. This is what breeds crime and violence. They are desensitized to their consciences and sensitized to glorify evil by deliberate means and by dark sciences that can easily be pointed out in the societal template. People not trusting their own understanding but being dependent for definitions. The above trick of perception is deliberate in the fact that the white man deliberately confuses the perception and make the black man go by the formula that tells him he has nowhere else but Africa. That would include the blacks in Australia and Jamaica, land we love. By these same trick perception sorcery, the reason for crime and violence might be interpreted. It is similar. You are a thief. You are a thief if you have the mindset of a thief, and you are a murderer if you have the mindset of a murderer. Seeing how common criminality is in our third world nation, we must then use our own intelligence to see what causes it instead of using the prescriptions from that same source that never worked. We must view what is entering their subliminal portals as kosher. It started with cartoons, movies, music, and games that got bloodier all the time. A slow process because the parents had to be acclimatized. The parents would refuse them at first, and therefore it was and had to be a step by step process to get them to accept the worst blood splattering games and TV shows. Well, the movies. These games highlight the violence of the glorious way of life, right? They highlighted the violence as the glorious way of life. No, I'm not stuttering. These games highlight the violence as the glorious way of life, similar to dance hall music and hip hop. You hear me, right? You become soulless. You become soulless. You hear about soullessness, right? Now, soullessness comes in various forms and degrees. You become soulless when you are so corrupted and desensitized that you can no longer be aware of that which is in the spirit, like a subliminal attack. For example, once I saw the leader of the UNIA, Mr. Golding, arguing with Mutabaruka, like trying to point out that the images of greatness being subliminally purported as not being of our own is not a huge problem. I was not only shocked but traumatized. It affected my sleep for an entire week. What was worse was that he presented the least urgent issue as the most urgent one at this time. His mindset was cut to the belief that you can fill water in a bottomless basket. So he was going for the economics instead of to prevent the adverse mindset cultivations first. Only a dead soul will not perceive that a nation must first be built by their mindset cultures, but he was their leader and not Muta, whom he thought he was correcting, but who was actually correcting him. Most of the things are cultures of dressing and sexual behaviors the average person would never accept until the dance hall or hip hop icons began to glorify them. People did not like certain types of pants and earrings until Shabarangs sported them. Vibes Cartel was the girly handbag guy in a step by step process to femininity and a step by step process to violence and mayhem. What they did was throw money at the dirt, saturating the market until it became kosher, while at the same time denying access to the original culture clean music that was elevating the people to a higher or to higher levels and a higher mindset. People like Tupac Shakur and Bob Marley were in the way, getting between the subject and their puppet masters. Poverty does not make criminals and murderers. It is but a cultivated mindset, a damned bad mind. If you don't have the cultivated mindset, you cannot be a thief or a murderer. You cannot. My people, I remember an experience I had with a gun as a youngster. Who would never go to be a thief or a violent person? There was a time when I was betrayed in business and it gave me a hard time. No money and no food. During that period, one night, someone came up in my yard, raining rocks at my windows and trying to break down the door. I did not know who it was and I had no enemies. I called the police. They told me that it was my house and they did not want to come, and then one of them got hurt. You heard me? They said I should defend my own yard. This is what I was told by police. I know of at least one other person who got a response similar to that. Even so, I was shocked when they even answered the phone because mostly the phones would not have been answered. There was a lot of incidents like that in that PJ Patterson era. It was a shock for me though, but it was my house. However, we discovered who it was, a person going insane over an incident that happened and was simply coming to me for help. This was her way of calling raining stones. Still, although it worked out well in the end that night, the experience with the cops sank in. There were lots of break ins during the time, and there were armed robberies. The next thing is that if you were caught with a gun, which for most of us would have to be illegal, you were treated like you murdered someone. In fact, those same police had a thing going where they would just kill you and put a story on you. You would be a crime solved statistic, although you never hurt anyone. But what was the right choice? To stay unprotected or to risk the cops killing you by you being armed to protect yourself? So there the police were actually creating a mindset that they claimed that were they were trying to fight against. They were creating exactly what they were trying to fight against because they criminalize you even if you have a gun but you are innocent at heart. In other words, you didn't do anything wrong, but you had it to protect yourself. It was at this time that I got my hands on a weapon, but it belonged to a friendly acquaintance. Just having it around was a lot of energy. If you had ego or any form of bile cultivations, the energy would be misdirected. For example, if you were a thief but a coward at that, you would lose most of the coward and go to thief. Same thing if you had the mind of a murderer, like your beloved guys in the games. The movies and the cartoons are like some glorified music artists. You would feel so invincible that you would think no one could shoot you, but you could shoot everyone. And that's why so many of them got shot. Now, let me tell you two experiences and you can tell me what it had to do with poverty for real. I was still going through my financial storm with rent to pay, for I paid rent at that time. I hardly ate all day and I was hungry in the night. Most people were staying off the streets because of a spate of armed robberies, but I had company. Remember, I did not care. I had to go walk or something that night. When I stepped out, a thought struck me. I could easily point the gun at someone and they would just readily give up their money. So my problem would be solved. I was hungry. I could use money, right? In those days, people got paid in cash on Friday. Every Friday, people got robbed, bro. Then I saw a young woman coming up the street looking timid as ever. She was alone in the night, and that's why she was scared. I saw her clutching onto her bag like it would give her comfort. I could point a gun on her, and then I would have her pay, right? I was hungry, right? When I got closer to her, she watched me nervously. Then her countenance changed and she spoke to ask me if I knew where a certain person lived. I did. She wanted me to walk with her to the house as she was afraid. And that was when I realized that the weapon could serve a useful purpose because I would not go that side unarmed. I followed her, feeling that it was seriously necessary. She would not be safe. There were no cell phones to make contact in those days. We passed by strange looking men that cracked jokes and would seem scary to me at another time. They would have hassled her badly if she was alone, judging by how they behaved with me being around. I showed her the gate and she began to call. I decided to stay until she got off those streets. I did not know her, but I would not leave her there. A man pushed out his head and told her to come in. I stood in the shadows and watched her go up to the door before I left. That was it. I decided to go home. As soon as I went through my gate, I saw a roasted breadfruit on the tree that I thought only had young ones on it. I mean, I searched, I looked, and there was no breadfruit already on the tree. But no, I was coming in and there was a roasted. I saw it clearly because it was near the street lights. My yard was well lit. I went to get the stick under an ackee tree that only had young ones on it, which was under the pipe. For some reason, I looked up and saw ready ones on it, and I searched in the daytime, and there was only young ones on it. Two miracles at once. It was only a few, but I thought that it was better than nothing. So I started picking those akis. I picked nearly 2 dozen, which was way a lot for one person. That was the third miracle. That night, I made a wood fire at the back door, roasted breadfruit, and cooked akis while I listened to Muta Baruka on the radio. As I reflected, the most fulfilling part of that night was seeing that young woman get to her destination safely. I had my problems. I had so many problems, but my most fulfilling part of the night was seeing that young woman get to her destination safely. I don't know why she was on the street alone or why someone did not go to meet her, but I could not leave her out there on a road where so many robberies were taking place. After that, I called the owner and returned his stuff. Weeks later, unfortunately for him, he was caught with illegal possession and charged. He got a lengthy sentence, but I don't think he was hurting anyone either. He was a hard-working man, only wanting to protect himself, and he was turned into a criminal and could not take care of his children. Next experience. I had finished work one Friday night. I was robbed at gunpoint. The guy took my pay and guess what? He sounded like a bully telling me to run, and I did not like that. I turned around to look at him, and noticed that he was pulling the trigger. I mean, literally, he was pulling the trigger. The gun was not going off, and he was scared. I was not, for I was not the evil one. I knew I was a stranger to him. So why did he want to press the trigger? I will explain, and you can tell me if poverty has anything to do with it. He wanted to make a duppy or a ghost so he could brag. What does that have to do with poverty? He had my money, and he had a lot of superstitions about why the gun was sticking to. He was more scared than I was, but I wanted to leave it alone. That fool didn't even know how to clean himself, much less how to clean a tool, but blaming it on some boo-hoo. He was looking at my ring and he was nervous. It was valued more than all the money I had, but he didn't want it. He was a thief and a murderer, and poverty or wealth would make no difference. He was like a loose crocodile that just added humans to its diet that need to be snuffed out. Give him $1 trillion and he will still stab you. And if he was richer than Elon Musk, he would still envy you for a cheap car he saw you with. He will take his 90% and then steal your 10%. This is what they do, and this is what goes on all day, every day. People are who they are according to their mindsets. Just the same way you can find an evil solution, you can find a good one to your problems as well. I implore you to think on these things. People, like, share, and subscribe. Peace out.